What's up, everybody? Farah Hanoun here, aka UFC News Alerts, and welcome to the second edition of the UFC News Alerts Q&A. Once again, thank you to all those who posted questions. I am here to answer them all, so let's get to it. All right, from Ross Edamar. Have you heard any truth on the Bisping Diaz fight rumor? Now, of course, that was turned down. I know you asked this question 4 days ago. That was turned down by Michael Bisping. It was just a rumor. He hasn't been approached for a fight against Nick Diaz. So, no, that is not true. He's still on the fence of whether he or not he wants to come back. So, for now, that fight isn't happening. There was another question about that. All right, Joe, what are your thoughts on posting the scorecards in between rounds? I think it would be a great idea and make fights more exciting. You know what? I've actually thought about that before, kind of like what they do in boxing. Of course, what he means is for us, the watchers, the viewers, to see the scorecards, not the fighters themselves, of course. But yeah, I mean, why not? That'll be a lot of fun, knowing who's up. 3-round fight, 5-round fight, if it's 1 apiece or 2-0. I think I'd love that. That'll be interesting. I think it'll make people want to watch more. I don't know. I mean, if somebody doesn't stay and watch the full fight, if they assume it's going to go to a decision, maybe they're more willing to continue the fight if they find out that it's 1-1. When you're supporting your favorite fighter, if you're watching a title fight or anything like that, and you just want to know what the judges are thinking. So yeah, I'd love that. I don't know if they'd ever do it. I haven't heard of them thinking about it, but that would be really cool. All right. At Jacob Ventura, will this be the end of Wonderboy if he loses to Darren Till? No, not the end. I believe with fighters, it's only the end if they make it the end, if that makes any sense. You know, for a lot of fighters, when they get older and unfortunately they take too much damage, then that's a different story. But in the case of Wonderboy, a guy who hasn't really taken much damage in his career, most damage would be in the Tyron Woodley fight. No, I mean, if Darren Till does beat him and knocks him out, I think it will be more of a mental recovery for Wonderboy than it is a physical one. I mean, physically he looks great. You know, he's coming off a great win over Masvidal, and yeah, he hasn't lost his step. So if he were to fight Darren Till and get knocked out, it'll be about him recovering mentally more than it is. But I don't think there's anything wrong with his game. I still think he's in his prime and one of the best welterweights in the world right now. So if that were to happen, I think it's a matter of him mentally recovering. And if he does, he'll be just fine. All right, at user unknown 2019, why did the UFC decide to book Cody versus TJ2 instead of Cruz 2? My guess would be because Dominic Cruz isn't healthy yet. I'm not sure, but I'd assume that they would have approached Cruz first. He broke his hand, of course, so yeah, I mean, clearly he's not healthy, and I believe that they went with Cody maybe as opposed to Jimmy Rivera or Marlon Moraes or anybody else because they wanted as a big pay-per-view fight. And I think for TJ, because TJ was kind of saying he wanted the Demetrius Johnson fight, right? And he wanted a big money fight. And when that wasn't going to happen, if he were to fight Jimmy Rivera or Marlon, maybe they wouldn't have put him in that pay-per-view slot, meaning he wouldn't make as much money as he'd want. I mean, right now he's fighting Cody at UFC 227. We don't know if it's the headliner. It's going to depend. But, you know, I believe they went with the Cody fight just because it's a big fight that they could put on pay-per-view. They had Cody at UFC 217 when he defended his belt against TJ, and then when he fought Dominic Cruz, it was UFC 207. It was a co-main event, so I do see what the UFC are trying to do with Cody, and they believe that he's one of, I mean, when I say a draw, I'm not talking Conor McGregor level, of course, but he is one of the guys that draws eyes. You know, if I categorize it, you've got the McGregor, the Lesnar, the Ronda, and then obviously Lesnar might come back. Ronda Rousey is not going to come back. And then we don't know what's up with Conor McGregor. So they're trying to get as many big pay-per-view stars as they can, and they could see Cody as being potentially marketable. I mean, when you look at things like social media and all that stuff, he is one of the few fighters that's crossed the million mark. I mean, these things matter. It shows popularity. He is one of the few fighters. I think he's at 1.5 million followers. So he's popular. He's got a fan base. He looks good. He fights well. I mean, he's a knockout artist. You know, he's and then there was a whole storyline. Of course, they did the whole Ultimate Fighter thing. The first fight was great. If anybody's ever gonna ask me, like, I was one of the. Does Cody deserve it? Probably not. To be fair, right? I mean, he wasn't a champion that defended his belt multiple times or something like that. But as a fan, I mean, forget what, because at the end of the day, they went with the rematch, right? Matchup wise, I feel it's one of the most fights I'm looking forward to. The first one was, and now the second one is as well, because I feel like the first one lived up to everything that we would have expected it to. Maybe it wasn't as long as we expected it to be, but it was fantastic. You know, you had Cody dropping TJ at the end of the first round, and then TJ recovering and then knocking him out. It was kind of like an action-packed edge of your seat. They're so evenly matched. So I love the fight. I'd watch it 10 times, to be honest. I feel like every time we watch those two fight, we're going to get a phenomenal fight. So if Cody beats TJ, don't be surprised if we see a trilogy. I'm telling you, especially if it goes, like a back and forth and an exciting one. It's a fight, it's a rivalry, especially not only with the history, but just the fight itself is fantastic, because sometimes you've got a rivalry that's so big, but stylistically the matchup isn't that great. But this, on paper, and even without the drama, is great, but obviously the drama draws the outside eyes, so I love the fight. But I will admit, of course, that Cody doesn't necessarily deserve it. I felt they could have went with Jimmy Rivera, but I see what the UFC are doing. All right, at Claudio 98. It is complete fantasy to see in one card Barbosa, Gaethje, Lee versus Poirier, Alvarez, and Conor versus Khabib. With the timing, we are okay, but is it possible to lightweight show in only one card? Yeah, definitely. Definitely, because they all fought in the same time. Poirier and Kevin Lee. Alvarez has been sitting out for a bit since December, but Khabib wants to return around November, so why not? We could very well see that. I think Barbosa needs to take some time off, and so does Justin Gaethje. Both guys have taken quite a bit of damage in the last couple of fights, so a November return isn't crazy, timeline-wise. I do believe there's the New York card in November, but after what Conor McGregor did, are New York going to want Conor back? I don't know. But I would assume that that big card in Madison Square Garden in November could very well feature a lightweight showdown between all these guys. But then again, it depends if these people want to wait. Like, Eddie Alvarez hasn't fought until, since December. Is he going to want to wait? That's a year. So I definitely see Alvarez being booked maybe around summertime. And then I think he's still figuring out his UFC deal. I do 100% expect him to re-sign, but I think he's still figuring out numbers and all that. But once he does, him and Kevin Lee's a pretty active guy as well. I mean, he talks about wanting to take time off, but he's always right back in there. Don't think when I spoke to Kevin Lee, I talked to him about that, and he said he's not thinking of a fight right now, but November does seem so far away. So I do expect these people to be booked before, these fighters. So maybe it won't come down to that showdown, just because Khabib himself specifically won't return until after Ramadan, of course. So for that reason, maybe not. Unless circumstances, injuries, all that, if that's what leads to that, then maybe. Alright, Dennis was asking about Bisping Diaz. Nope, not true. At Josh Ellicott, should Luke Rockhold retire or go to what is up with all these retire questions? No, why retire? I mean, look, different fighters fight for different reasons, but Luke Rockhold's super talented. Why would he retire? Yes, his defensively, he needs to tighten up a little bit, but he's super talented. Rockhold's one of the better fighters in the middleweight division, and now he talked about moving to light heavyweight because the weight cut is too big on him. I mean, as fighters get older, they always are concerned about weight cuts. So it makes sense at this point in Luke Rockhold's career with the top of the middleweight, like the middleweight picture got a lot blurrier for him, of course, after losing to Yoel Romero. So he knows that he's a solid enough name in a shallow enough division like the light heavyweight division. I mean, it's a little shallow, but not as deep as the other ones. So he knows that he can move up. He called out Alexander Gustafsson, which is super gutsy. I mean, Gustafsson's not an easy fight for anybody. I believe Gustafsson's one of those guys that stylistically he's long, he's tall, he can box, he can wrestle, underrated wrestler. He's a tough fight for anybody. So for Luke Rockhold to go straight to Gustafsson is pretty gutsy, but he's a big enough name to demand these kind of fights. I don't see Luke Rockhold at this point in his career, former Strikeforce champion. He's kind of fought everybody to be looking for lesser names and build his way up. So he'll shoot right for the stars, and he's going for Alexander Gustafsson. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but if he were to fight Gustafsson and beat Gustafsson, then you're talking about right away. You know what I mean? Like, he could right away get a title shot. Of course, DC is his teammate, so again, I think timing. I think these days with the UFC, it's all about timing. Sometimes the stars align for certain people. You've got people on 10 fight win streaks and they can't catch a break, and you get others that just pop out of nowhere, get the push from the UFC, capitalize, and they're champions. So you never know. It's all about timing. At Kyle Shu 13. Is there any natural flyweight, not Dillashaw, that's actually a threat to Mighty Mouse? I actually would like to see the Henry Cejudo rematch, just because his striking, he's got that new like karate style striking, and he's looked really good. And he can wrestle. I know he had DJ down for a very short while, but Demetrius got back up. But his ability to wrestle in general, and now with this new striking style, I guess would make it interesting, the rematch. So if I'm going to put anybody with Joseph Benavidez, who's super talented in my opinion, but I felt like Cejudo beat him when they fought. It was a super close fight. Plus, he's coming off a long layoff. So he's fighting Sergio Pettis, of course. So right now, I'd say I see Henry Cejudo potentially being the biggest threat. I'm expecting them to put that fight together. I don't know why they haven't yet. Do you think Jeremy Stephens is a threat in his division to be a potential champ? He is a threat. He's been getting a lot of knock. He's looked better than he's ever looked, Jeremy Stephens. It's pretty crazy. So all those people that send questions like, should blah, blah, blah retire? Nothing wrong with the questions, of course, but, sometimes people just suddenly turn things around in their career. And Jeremy Stephens is one of those guys. And he's got a massive opportunity against Jose Aldo, because Jose Aldo is coming off back-to-back knockout losses to Max Holloway. 3 out of his last 4 have been knockout losses. And you got a guy that hits like a truck like Jeremy Stephens. But at the end of the day, even though Jose Aldo may not be the Jose Aldo he was before because of the amount of damage he's taken, he's still Jose Aldo, former champion. So having that feather in your cap would be huge for Jeremy Stephens. Would he get a title shot over it? I do believe Frankie would still be ahead of him, even though he lost to Brian Ortega. I still think Frankie rebounding by beating Cub, I still think he would get the title shot over Jeremy Stephens. He does hold a win over Jeremy Stephens not too long ago, but Stephens is on the right track. You keep winning, you keep knocking guys out. They can only deny you for so long, and yes, Jeremy Stephens has fought Max before, but he hasn't fought Brian Ortega, so if Brian Ortega becomes champion, it's like a fresh face for a lot of people that haven't fought him. So, like I said, it depends on who wins what, who's free and injury free and all that. But yeah, I mean, Jeremy Stephens definitely on the right track. He's probably in the best position he's ever been in his career. At Will Chamberlain. No way. No, I'm kidding. Will Chamberlain. Will Chamberlain, not Will Chamberlain. Khabib or T-City a lightweight? Man, stylistically, that's a phenomenal fight, but I think, T-City has his hands full with Max Holloway right now, so we'll see what he does against Max. People underestimate him all the time, Ortega. A lot of times he could be losing, but he's so calm and composed in there. And obviously, stylistically, it's an amazing fight. I'm glad he didn't take it on short notice because that's not what I want to see. I don't want to see a short notice fight. I want a full camp Brian Ortega. I'd want a full camp Brian Ortega versus a full camp Khabib. Also, a Khabib that's expecting Brian Ortega as well, because obviously then he'd do a ton of jiu-jitsu training for Ortega. But Khabib smashes people on top positions, so that'll be interesting. Because Ortega, I feel like his jiu-jitsu is phenomenal. He can kind of get a submission. Any mistake you make, just for a second, he'll make you pay. And his striking, I'd give him the striking advantage over Khabib, and his striking is getting a lot better. He welcomes the takedown, and I feel Khabib would still take him down even though he knows how much of a threat he is. He'd eventually take it. So if Ortega would pressure him and hurt him on the feet and make Khabib look for the takedown, even though I feel like Khabib would anyway, but if Khabib were to decide, like, all right, I'm not going to go for the takedown, kind of like what happened with Frankie Edgar. He wasn't expecting to get knocked out by Brian Ortega. Nobody expected that. But he avoided the wrestling because why would he go to Ortega's world? And Edgar felt like he had the striking advantage. I mean, Edgar is a very good boxer, so I do give Ortega the striking advantage over Khabib. But yeah, it's a very interesting stylistic fight. But I think it'll be a lot more hyped up if Ortega were to beat Max and get that title. Kind of like a champion versus champion. But we'll see. I mean, Khabib's got tons of people waiting for him in the lightweight division. So I don't know if we see that fight anytime soon. Alright. At Corinne Arnold. Who do you see winning between TJ and Cody? And do you think the winner will fight Mighty Mouse? Again, I don't answer the who will win. Because like I said before, I like to keep a good rapport with all the fighters. But again, like I mentioned before, I love the fight. I feel like any of them. I feel like if they fought 10 times, it could be 5-5. That's how evenly matched. I do believe TJ's got more of a striking arsenal. I knew that left high kick was going to be pivotal. And it was in the first fight. So that's something Cody's got to watch out for. It will be interesting to see if he incorporates any leg kicks because Cody's kind of heavy on his lead leg. He is very fast, but he's quite heavy on his lead leg. So it'll be, as a boxing stance, so it'll be interesting to see if TJ will look to do that. But the wrestling is dead even in my opinion. And I don't know if any of them are really going to attempt to take down. We did see Cody attempt a sneaky takedown against Dominic Cruz. It was super slick, but he couldn't keep him down. I don't think either one of them will be able... When it's Cruz, TJ, Cody, I believe all of them can take each other down, but I don't think any of them can keep the other one down. They're just so good, all three of them. And will the winner fight Mighty Mouse? TJ definitely wants that fight. It didn't come into fruition for him. So if he beats Cody, I'm 100% sure he's going to still look for that. Same thing for Cody. But it's going to come down, for Mighty Mouse. I don't think Mighty Mouse is scared. He just wants to get paid. So until the UFC really get invested in that fight, I don't know. At Francesco Furioso, what do you think about European fight cards not being as stacked as other cards? What do you think about the next step of the UFC in terms of weight cut, gloves, too much media before a fight, etc.? All right, that's a two-part question. The European fight cards, that's because I feel they know that they're going to sell out regardless. So they don't want to kind of put the big stars there for nothing. Like, they'd rather focus on their FS1 ratings, their Big Fox ratings. If they put on the big stars in the European cards that sell out regardless, and people watch on Fight Pass, most of these European cards are Fight Pass, they're not too worried about it. They stack it with a lot of local fighters, and that's all they're concerned about, and they sell out every single time. Even the cards that I felt like sometimes were way too weak, they sell out. Because people are excited. I mean, the UFC is coming to town. I can imagine if it was for me, if the UFC were to come to my town, I don't care who they put, I'm going to go watch it. So I get how they feel, because with the UK, for example, if you've got them coming 2, 3, maybe 3 times a year, it's London, Liverpool, maybe London again. But Liverpool's not London, right? So you'll have the people that will go from London to Liverpool see, but some people can't afford it or don't have time. So for them, London and Liverpool is 2 different things. So people just get excited to have the UFC come to town, so they don't really care who's fighting on the card. And I think now with Liverpool having Darren Till and Wonderboy is such a good fight that they could have put that on a pay-per-view main card. It's that good of a fight. I mean, either because a lot of people are buying into Darren Till's hype, they believe he's the next big thing. You've got the whole Liverpool behind him, the whole of the UK, the whole of Europe, even people outside of Europe. And then you got the people who are like annoyed, like, what has this guy done? It's so annoying when the UFC push people that don't deserve it. Wonderboy is so much better, blah, blah, blah. So you get annoyed and you're like, I can't wait to watch Wonderboy knock him out and smash that hype train. And either way, you got people from both sides wanting to watch. Then, of course, you got the Wonderboy fans wanting to watch. So stylistically as well, there's so much intrigue because don't think any of them are going for a takedown. They've got unique striking, sharp, precise. They're not one-punch KO people. They're kind of breaking you down, and they're super technical, and they're long, and they're rangy. It's a very interesting stylistic matchup as well. So I feel like that fight could have been in a pay-per-view main card. And now with Gunnar Nelson being injured and out of his co-main event against Neil Magny, that doesn't hurt anything. Because the main event is that good that if they don't find Magny an opponent, they could just pull him from the card and put anybody to co-main. They're not worried. I feel like they take a massive hit, of course, if something, God forbid, would happen to the main event. But other than that, it is a solid card as well. I mean, it is, in my opinion, a big hit that Gunnar is injured. But the show still goes on. They sold out. I believe that the same people that were going to watch it anyway are going to watch it anyway just because the main event is phenomenal. All right. At Mike Fitz, any truth behind Rockhold Weidman 2 at UFC 226? Weidman's out for a while, so doubt it. He just had thumb surgery again, so he's been out for a while. Excuse me. I don't think Weidman's fighting at least till the end of the year. They'll probably get him on that November card at MSG. And who do you think? Same guy. Sorry. What do you think is Gustafsson's next fight? I know Gustafsson wants the Rockhold fight too, so he'd be down for that. So if Rockhold wants it and Gustafsson wants it, they'll go for it. Okay, you asked status on UFC Chile. I'm pretty sure you know that, of course, Kamar is fighting Damian Maia. We also had Ray Borg. Unfortunately for him, he's got family problems. His son is sick. He's underwent multiple surgeries, so prayers to him and his family. A lot of bad luck for Ray Borg, obviously with the bus incident first, and now his son, family first, of course, so totally understandable. Alejandro Pantoja has stepped in. That's a rematch from The Ultimate Fighter. So that's a good replacement. It's not very often that we get good replacements, so that's a solid replacement, and it's a rematch. That was the first time Brandon Moreno surprised people because I think he was one of the lower picks. Was he the last pick or one of the lower picks? And Pantoja was the number one pick, and it was such a close fight. Pantoja did win, but it was such a close fight, and I feel like Moreno impressed a lot of people. And he lost in the first round of the Tough House, and then he went on quite a tear in the UFC, so actually, I like the rematch. Pantoja's done solid in the UFC as well, so I love the replacement. At Scherzer 444, what is it going to take for the UFC titles to get back to how they were without champs talking about legacy and multiple belts? I don't think it's going to go back to that, I'm afraid. Because even when you've got champions or potential champions that have the old school mentality, they can't help it. When opportunity presents itself, they can't help but say yes. So you got Max Holloway, who's got that old school mentality, which I love. Fighting, for Aldo twice, he wants to fight whoever's in front of him. Love it. Stipe Miocic, same thing. But now there isn't a clear-cut contender at heavyweight for Stipe, so he gets the benefit of the doubt fighting Daniel Cormier. He's fighting a guy who's stepping up to him, so he's not doing anything. Like the super fight is from the other side. And for Daniel Cormier, you don't really have a clear-cut contender. I mean, Gustafsson wants that fight, but for DC at this point in his career, of course he'll go for the Stipe fight over fighting Gustafsson again. So much more to gain. This is a whole new thing that he could add to his legacy. But yeah, I think a lot of some fighters, they have that old school mentality and I'll fight anybody. but they just get lured in. They get lured in when the idea is presented to them. They get lured in more money, bigger cards, more intrigue. It's just everything is an advantage for them, especially if they're fighting somebody that's a weight class above and they get to prove something extra or go for a second title. Titles mean more money, all that. So I don't think we're ever going to go back to dances with cakes. What is the next trend that fighters will follow as far as selling themselves? Will the humble approach come back? I feel the tide may be turning slightly from the braggadocious and flamboyant to the just be yourself. Rose and Ortega thoughts. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, you do have these people coming with the old school mentality. Max always one of those examples. Max really grew on me. I've always liked Max, but lately he really grew on me just because of that old school mentality, and he's a cool guy. His fight with Ortega is an example. There you go. Ortega's on a tear, undefeated, all finishes in the UFC, coming off back-to-back finishes over Cub Swanson and Frankie Edgar. It's incredible. Then he goes and talks about a foundation, the Brian Ortega Foundation. It's amazing. And then Rose Namajunas as well. She back-to-back wins over Joanna. That's no joke. And she's taking the humble approach as well. So, I mean, yeah, seeing a title fight like Max and Ortega that has a lot of people interested. And I love how they put it as a co-main to DC and Stipe, a super fight. Because a lot of fans will tell you, of course, I'm looking forward to Max and Ortega more than DC and Stipe. And then you've got a lot of fans that will tell you the opposite. So I think the two title fights on 226 cater to both kind of fans. Me as a fan, I love both fights, but I feel like both kind of fights. And then no trash talk involved with Max and Ortega. It's just two phenomenal fighters that have been on a roll. And Max is kind of like Ortega as well. He's always comfortable in the fight. Even if things aren't going his way, he's calm and composed. Kind of like the Jose Aldo fights. I mean, the first Aldo fight, Aldo came out strong and Max was so calm and composed. And Ortega has that same thing. I mean, how many times have we seen Ortega losing the fight and then just finish it? So I love the fight. And I feel like that's a fight on a massive pay-per-view card, a title fight that will draw a lot of intrigue and has got zero trash talking. So yeah, I mean, possibly. Trying to go. How come you UFC guys? I am not a UFC guy or girl, I should say. I don't make any decisions. Not doing nothing to Conor. I can't understand you guys brushing it under the rug. I think they're waiting to see what's gonna happen in the court date. What do you want the UFC to do right now? You know what I mean? It's irrelevant for them to do something until they see what's going to happen with the court date. So June 14th, we'll see what happens with Conor McGregor, and then the UFC go from there. But the UFC are going to support Conor. I mean, they really value him. If people haven't noticed, they're gonna. I believe they're gonna stand by his side. But we'll see. Doesn't make what he did acceptable, of course. But we'll see the court date. I think that will determine a lot. At Classic Nick Johnson, who do you think is legitimately the most dangerous matchup for Khabib? You know what? I want to see the Conor fight. Just because both guys are so good at what they do. And it's a matter of... Because I believe if you're going to... Khabib can take anybody down. So I get where Eddie Alvarez is coming from, where he feels like he'd be a tough matchup for Khabib. But I don't know why I just feel Khabib can take him down too. With Conor, because Conor's not just any kind of striker. Very precise, very powerful, very fast. He's just a legit high-level striker. And I feel like he can present an interesting challenge to Khabib. Of course Khabib can take him down. No doubt at all. And very few people will have anything to offer off of their back. I mean, you're talking like Brian Ortega, I feel, is the only fighter that could be of a threat. Him and Tony Ferguson be a threat to Khabib on the ground. Anybody else, I don't think they'd do anything. But I do, yeah, I mean, Conor, I feel, will be very interesting. You know, he knows the takedown's coming. He can time a counter so perfectly. And Khabib tends to rush in quite recklessly. It's worked for him. I'm not going to tell him how to do what he does, but sometimes he'll rush in recklessly. He'll throw like a flying knee just to grab the fighter and stack him against the cage. We know how well Conor times counters. Now, how do you counter a flying knee? Okay, but like in general, with Khabib's chin quite up, trying to close the distance, it'll be interesting because you know that Conor will be there for the counter. So it could go with Khabib smashing him, game over, and could be with Conor quick knockout. I don't know, but I just intrigue. It's that, and the Tony Ferguson fight as well. Again, of course, I believe he takes Tony down, but how much can you do off of your back when you're taking that kind of damage from Khabib is the question that I'd wonder. But Tony's super tough. He's one of those guys as well, like Max and like Ortega, that even when things aren't going well for him, he's super calm and composed and has many ways to finish the fight. Those are the kind of guys that I love to watch fight, because if you're a diehard fan of theirs, you don't really panic at any point in the fight because they're so dangerous and calm and composed and tough, and their cardio is good. And you don't worry, they could be getting beat up for a round or two, and they can still find not only a way to win the fight, a way to finish the fight. Which is, yeah, those three guys have that. Max, Khabib, and Tony Ferguson. And, Max, Ortega, and Tony Ferguson. And Khabib will put you in compromising positions. So they will face that adversity pretty much 100%. And that's why it will be interesting. You need someone who knows how to deal well. Barbosa was all hurt, but he didn't have much to offer. He still looked good in the striking with Kevin Lee and Khabib, but he didn't have much to offer off of his back and in terms of finishing the fight. Although he could at any point, you saw that with Kevin Lee. But I meant more in a resistance way, like resisting the takedown or finding a way to finish off of your back and that. But yeah, of course, Edson Barbosa is so tough. At the sober idiot 18. Do you think Raquel Pennington has a real shot at beating Amanda Nunes? If so, why? I do think she has a chance. I'd give the edge to Amanda Nunes. I think she does a little bit of everything better, but Raquel is tough. She'll press forward. Her striking's underrated. I think she can make it real interesting. If she has the cardio to put the pressure on Amanda Nunes from the get-go, it can get interesting. That's how I feel she'll succeed. If she stands back and lets Nunes unload her combinations and get comfortable on the feet, it won't go so well for her. But if she pushes the pace, kind of bites down on her mouthpiece and really puts it on Nunes, it'll be interesting. Will Artur Lobov ever fight again in the UFC? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think the UFC are thinking about that right now. I'm pretty sure they're more worried about Conor, but with Conor comes Artem, so we'll see. Have you reached out to Ariel Helwani to be a journalist mentor? No, but if you'd want to mentor me, sure, I'll take it. How do you see the lightweight division playing out from this point onwards? As in, what are the most sensible fights? If everybody's healthy, nobody has a problem, like everybody's ready to go right now, I'd do Khabib, Conor, I'd do Tony, Kevin Lee, and I'd book the rematch between Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. That's what I'd do. But again, it can't just happen like that because not everybody's healthy. Not everybody's free to fight. Not everybody has no issues. But that's what I do. At Hector Gar, 55. Any news about the Diaz brothers? Nope. That Nick Diaz Bisping thing was a rumor, and that's pretty much it that we've heard. Nate only wants Conor, so I don't think he's interested in anything else. At Glow K4, can a black girl ever be the face of the UFC? Sure, why not? I don't think there's any limitation for that. There just hasn't been a top ranked fighter like or a title challenger. You got Angela Hill, you got Shayna Dobson. Those are the ones at the top of my head. But no, I mean, yeah, a black girl can be the face of the UFC because we've seen that with the male fighters. We've seen John Jones. We've seen a lot of and Kevin Lee's doing his thing. Anthony Johnson was almost a champion, so I don't think race is a limitation for a UFC fighter to be the face of the UFC. When will we see Juliana? I'm assuming Juliana Pena back in the octagon. She's badass and could cause a lot of trouble to that new 125. I agree. I'd love to see Juliana in the 125 division, but she just had a kid and she's getting back in shape. So maybe I have no clue when she'd return, but I'm pretty sure she'll return as soon as she can. All right. Anything on Mickey Gall? No, but I do believe he has a fight. Did he say that or did I read that somewhere? But I think he has a fight. Just don't know who. But he looks like he's training hard, so I think Mickey Gall has a fight. If DC wins, does he retire? Maybe. Maybe. Because if he takes a ton of damage... Look, this is what I think. If DC wins and John Jones is back and active, problem-free, he'll fight Jones again. He can't help it. The competitor in DC can't help it. He'd fight Jones 100 times. I think he'll rest comfortable retiring without beating Jones. I feel like he's done enough, especially if he beats Stipe. But I feel like win or lose against Stipe, if John Jones is available, he'll fight him before he retires. That's what I believe. If he wins or loses against Stipe and John Jones is nowhere near coming back, that's a different question. At Noah Falcon 25, I'm going to take a couple more. Is Condit's career in the cage coming to an end? I feel like his heart's not in it. Again, I can't speak for him, but I really believe Condit's heart's not in it. I feel like the Robbie Lawler fight changed him. It's a lot of damage that he took in that fight. Very disheartening because it was such a close fight and a lot of people felt like he won the fight. But I don't know. I feel like his heart and mind aren't in it. So that's going to be up to him, really. He looked solid against Cowboy Oliveira, a lot better than he did against Neil Magny, but it just didn't go his way. All right, last one. At Luke Murray 229. Which fighter made you love MMA? That's a good one. Which fighter? I would probably say... I mean, I started out watching around 2009, and the stars back then were kind of GSP, Anderson Silva. I have to say those two. I mean, it sounds like such a typical answer. I do have a lot of fighters that I did watch from back in the day, but I feel like with Silva, Son, and One, when I saw the promo side of things, you know, it's different when you just watch a fight, and then it's different when you actually understand the sport and what goes behind it. And with the UFC, there's a lot of promo and stuff, and Silva's Son and One had so much promo, and that was in 2010. And I was so intrigued. I had watched Anderson fight a couple of times, and I'm like, how is this guy disrespecting Anderson Silva? It's crazy. And the way the fight ended as well, you know, Anderson being dominated, and then, yeah, so it's pretty, I'd say Anderson Silva and George St. Pierre. That's another guy I watched. He was a class act. Just a great athlete. Not my favorite style of fighting with the wrestling, but he's such an intelligent fighter that you can't admire him. So I'd say Anderson Silva and George St. Pierre. Those two. There are a lot of guys that I used to watch early on. Uriah Faber is one of those guys I watched early. He was a cool California kid, looked so happy. I mean, they didn't give me the typical image of what you'd see of fighters. So I loved watching Uriah Faber fight from the WEC. I watched Nate Diaz on The Ultimate Fighter. There are a lot of guys from back in the day, but I'd say the two would be Anderson Silva, just because he'd put on a straight show in the octagon. And George St. Pierre, there was something I admired about him because he was such a class act. And just a super talented guy, just like a great guy. Like, it was nice to see that side of it. Not that I thought everybody was barbaric or whatever, but it's nice to see that they could show people who do think that MMA fighters are like crazy, roided, barbaric people that, you know, there's you can be a class act. Like George St. Pierre is just a super nice guy, so I like that. But then there's tons of other fighters that I started watching from that point until now. Everybody now. All right, that's it. Thank you guys so much for posting these questions. Sorry it took so long to get back to you guys, but kind of had a couple of interviews that I was editing that came up sooner than I thought. But thank you so much for posting your questions, and I'll see you guys next week.